We continue now at the top of Daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis in Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 63b. On the previous Talmud, the Mishnah said that those who would go up the Mizbeach would go up the Mizbeach on the east side of the ramp and turn right and go around the Mizbeach, umakifin v'yordin derech smol, and then they would go around the Mizbeach and come down along the left side. That just means the left side from when they were going up the Mizbeach on their left. They would go down the other side of the Mizbeach, the west side of the Mizbeach, chutz min ha'ola legimel elu, with the exception of those who went up for these three things, shayu olin v'yordin ala akif, because they would go up and then they would go down, essentially turning back on their heels. Rashi explains, makifim derech smol, they would come down on the left side, meaning makifim es ha-mizbeach b'shvil tzorchei avoda, they would go around the mizbeach for whatever avoda they needed to do, o lamatan demei chatas, either for the application of the blood of the chatos, o sidr ha-ma'aracha, or arranging the ma'aracha where the fires were, o hefech ivarim b'tzinura, or turning over the limbs on the mizbeach in the fire, v'yordin b'ma'aravo shal kevish, and then they would come down on the western side of the ramp, shehu smol la'olim b'mizbeach b'aliyos, and that would be to the left of those who are going up the Mizbeach, on the other side of the ramp, again on the east side of the ramp. And then the Mishnah said, with the exception of these three, that they would go up and then they would turn back on their heels, meaning legimel dvarim elu hanasim bekeren ma'aravis dromis. What it means is those things that were just mentioned in the Mishnah that are done in the southwestern corner, which were nesachim, which refer to the libations, ve'ola sa'of, and the bird olas, kishu ola lemizbeach pona l'smol ba'osa hakeren, when he would go up on the Mizbeach, he would turn to the left at that corner, and then when he finished, he would turn on his heels, derech aliyasu, the same way that he went up. The Gemara is going to ask on this, habayin on derech yamin, what about the fact that he's supposed to go up on the right? Now, in terms of the three things that are done on the lower half of the Mizbeach, eino olav, eino makiv, he doesn't have to go up the Mizbeach at all, he doesn't have to go around, ela omid ala ritzba bekarka, rather he just stands on the floor, he stands on the ground. And the Gemara says, Minohani Mili, from where do we know this? Rashi explains, Minohani Mili dechatas ha'of bekeren ma'aravis dromis, from where do we know that the bird carbon chatas, that it is done, the avoda is done in the southwestern corner of the Mizbeach. Amar Rabbi Yoshua says, Amar Krotz, because the pasuk says, Lo yasim ole hashemen, v'lo yiten ole levona, you don't put on their oil, you don't have any levona, any frankincense, ki chatos, because it is a chatos, chatos kruya mincha, chatos is referred to as a mincha, umincha kruya chatos, and mincha is referred to as a chatos. And that's the idea, is machatas to unat safon, just like the chatas requires north, af mincha to unat safon, so too the mincha requires north, uma mincha bekeren ma'aravis dromis, just like the mincha is in the southwestern corner, af chatos bekeren ma'aravis dromis, so too the chatos is in the southwestern corner. Rashi explains, Lo yasam aleh b'minchas chote ksiv. This pasuk is written by the carbon mincha of the sinner, and it's written haba tachas chatas ha'of b'dali dalus. This is the carbon that's brought. Let's say a person is very poor, he can't bring the chatas ha'of, so he brings the minchas chote. V'keri rachmon chatas, and the pasuk calls it a chatas. V'ashmina nami sha'chatas kriya mincha. So it's telling us that a chatas is called mincha. Again, we're trying to find the source over here that the chatas ha'of is bekeren ma'aravis dromis. So the chatas is referred to as a mincha. Tahachi mashman nami ki hachatas nevcha lios mincha, because that's how the pasuk can also be understood, that the chatas, it turns into becoming a mincha. Machatas to unat safon, just like a chatas requires north. Yodea ani shagirsa zu shibush. Rashi says that I know that this girsa is mistaken. Sharei lo chatas ha'of lo mincha to and safon, because the chatas ha'of and the mincha do not require north, so that's not true. V'im tomer, now if you're going to suggest minchas chote chaluka min hashar u'lechatas behema makishla, you're going to say that minchas chote is different than the others, it's compared to a chatos behema, maybe you'll suggest havalei lamisni v'masnisin to katani la'el, so then it should have been in the Mishnah earlier, haminachos nikmasas b'chol makom be'azara, it should have said, carbon mincha, the kmitz is anywhere in the azara, chutz mi minchas chote, except for the minchas chote, which needs to be north. V'yod hech efshar chatos ha'of shabachas chatos behema eina tunat safon, how is it possible that the chatos ha'of, which is instead of the chatos behema, that it doesn't require north, sharei nasis bekeren ma'aravis dromis, because it's done in the southwestern corner, uve mincha haba tachas ha'of titon safon, yet you're going to say that the mincha that it comes instead of the of, that does require north, meaning what Rashi is asking is, how can you say that the chatas ha'of, which is which is because the person can't bring an animal, so he has to bring a bird. So that's Eina Tunat Safon. That one does not require north. And then you're going to say that the Karban Mincha, which is instead of the bird Karban Chatas, that does require north. The Girsa Achrina, Garsinan Ba Ve'eni Odeya Amita, says there's another Girsa, I don't know the truth. Venira Be'enai, Rashi says it seems to me, Ma Chatas Psula Shalo Lishma, that what it really means to say is as follows. Just like Chatas, the comparison is as follows. Just like Chatas is possible if it's Shalo Lishma, if it's not brought for its own sake. Af Mincha Psula Shalo Lishma, so too Mincha is possible, is disqualified if it's Shalo Lishma. V'hachanami Alfina Lava Parakama de Menachos. That we actually learn in the first parak of Menachos. And then Uma Mincha, we make the following comparison. Just like Mincha to Una Hagosha Bekaren Maravis Dromas, it needs to be brought close to the southwestern corner of the Mizbeach. Av Chatas Ha'of Avodasa Bekaren Maravis Dromas. So too the Chatas Ha'of, its avoda is in the southwestern corner of the Mizbeach. V'hazoas Daman, it's the sprinkling of its blood. He Ikar Avodasa. That's the main avoda by Chatas Ha'of. So that's how we know the southwestern corner. And the Gemara continues, Mincha Gufa Minolan, from where do you know by Karban Mincha itself that it needs to be brought to the southwest corner of the Mizbeach? The Tanya, as we learned in the following Brisa, Lifnei Hashem, it says Lifnei Hashem, the full pasuk, Vizos Toras HaMincha Hakre Vosa B'nei Aaron Lifnei Hashem El Pnei HaMizbeach. It says you bring it Lifnei Hashem, and then it says El Pnei HaMizbeach, Lifnei Hashem, so Yochel B'mayriv. The Brisa says one might think that means in the west, that's in front of Hashem. Talmud Lomer El Pnei HaMizbeach, the pasuk says by the face of the Mizbeach. The face of the Mizbeach, as we said earlier, is the ramp of the Mizbeach that refers to the south. And so El Pnei HaMizbeach, but if you only had El Pnei HaMizbeach, Yochel B'darom, one might think the south. Talmud Lomer Lifnei Hashem, it says Lifnei Hashem. So Hakait said, how do we fulfill both of these psukim? Magisha B'Karen Maravis Dromas, you bring it close to the southwestern corner, Keneged Chuda Shal Karen Vidayo, by the sharp edge of the corner, and that is sufficient. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, Yochel Yagishenu L'Ma'arava Shel Keren, O L'Droma Shel Keren. One might think to bring it close to the west of the corner, or to the south of the corner. Amrit, we say the following, we make the following argument. Kol Mokom Shata Motzi Shnei Mikros, anytime you have two psukim, Echad Mekayim Atzmo, Mekayim Chaveru, one pasuk you can fulfill that pasuk and the other pasuk. V'Echad Mekayim Atzmo Umevatel Chaveru, and one of the psukim, if you fulfill that pasuk, you're going to nullify the other pasuk. So Manich we leave aside the pasuk which fulfills itself but nullifies the other pasuk, and instead we grab onto the pasuk which fulfills itself and fulfills the other pasuk. And the Brisa now explains, Rabbi Eliezer explains, Kishat Omer al Panei Hashem b'mayriv. If you're going to say al Panei Hashem and say you're going to do it in the west, so Hechen Kiyamt al Panei HaMizbeach, how have you fulfilled the face of the Mizbeach, which would be the south? You would not have fulfilled it. Ukishat Omer al Panei HaMizbeach b'darim, but when you say al Panei HaMizbeach means the south, Kiyamt al Lefnei Hashem b'darim, you're also fulfilling Lefnei Hashem if you do it in the south, and therefore Rabbi Eliezer is saying that the south of the corner, that's going to fulfill both. The Gemara says, Hechen Kiyamt, how have you fulfilled both? How have you fulfilled in front of Hashem by the south of the Mizbeach? Rav Ashi says, Kasavar Haitan, it's because this Tana holds, Kule Mizbeach B'tzafon Kai, the Mizbeach was entirely in the north. And so therefore, if you're at the south of the Mizbeach, you're actually going to be right in front of the entranceway to the Heichol, and therefore that is Lifnei Hashem. And Rashi explains, Rabbi Eliezer says, Me'achar Shepart L'chakasa B'hagoshasa, Shtei Rucho, since the Pasuk specifies the two walls of the Mizbeach, again talking about the west and the south, Yachol le'eza mehen sheyirtza, one might think that he can choose whichever he wants. Hachi Garsinan says, Rashi, the proper text is, Yachol yagishana l'ma'arava o l'duroma shel keren, one might think he should bring it close to the west or the south of the corner. And then the Gemara said, Kule Mizbeach b'tzafon kai, the whole Mizbeach is in the north, Nimsa duromo shel Mizbeach, so it would turn out that the south of the Mizbeach, Kolo l'neged HaPesach, is right there by the entranceway of the Heichol, v'karina nami b'tzad duromo l'fnei Hashem, so therefore the south side of the Mizbeach would be called Lifnei Hashem. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, B'chol makam haisa ksheira, when it comes to the chatas ha'of, it's kosher everywhere, but again, the proper place is the southwest side of the Mizbeach. And the Gemara says, my kamra, what exactly does the Mishnah mean? Again, that B'chol makam, in any place it's kosher, but the southwest is the proper area. Amar Rav Ashi says, Hachi kamra, this is what the Mishnah is saying. B'chol makam haisa ksheira l'melikasa, in terms of doing the malika, any area is kosher for the malika, elo zehaya makom lahaza asa, but in terms of the sprinkling sprinkling of the blood, this is the proper place, meaning the southwest corner of the Mizbeach. And the Gemara says, Tanina lahadetanu rabbanan, our Mishnah is saying the same thing as was taught in the following brisa, Molka b'chol makom b'mizbeach kasher. If the malika is done in any part of the Mizbeach, again, the malika by the bird karbanos was done with the fingernail of the Kohen instead of the traditional slaughtering of the animal. So there, b'chol makom b'mizbeach, all areas of the Mizbeach is kosher. Hiza dama b'chol makom kshera. If he sprinkles the blood in any area, it is kosher. Hiza v'lo mitza kshera. If he sprinkles the blood but doesn't squeeze the blood, that's kosher. Uvilvan sheyiten mechut hasikra ulamata midam hanefesh. As long as he does the application of the blood from below the chut hasikra, means the lower half of the mizbeach, again from the sole blood of the bird. And so the Gemara says, "My kamar, what exactly is this brisa saying?" Hachi kamar is saying as follows: Molka b'chol makom b'mizbeach kashera. If he does the malika in any part of the mizbeach, it's kosher. Mitzadama b'chol makom b'mizbeach kashera. If he squeezes the blood in any part of the mizbeach, it is kosher. Rashi explains, "B'chol makom haisa kashera l'mlikasa bein lamala bein lamata." When we're saying in any area it's kosher for malika, that means it can be done above or below. Techi alfinan lamata b'chata sa'of b'hazohu di alfinan lekaman b'shmaitin. When we talk about the lower half of the mizbeach by chatas of, that's specifically learned by the sprinkling of the blood. V'hiza midam hachatas al kir. It says that he sprinkles it on the wall. V'yamar mar, and the master said zekir hatachton. This is the lower part of the wall. V'karen maravis dromis nami b'haza hudi alfin. And also, when we talk about the southwest corner, that's by the sprinkling. Dehame hagasha d'mincha yolif, because that's learned from the bringing close by the carbon mincha. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Dalid Amid Aleph.